Hello, welcome to another episode of our podcast. Our guest today is one and only Edwarda Ka-Spela of the legendary Pink Dots. Hello, awesome to have you here, and how are you?
Oh, total pleasure. Just working hard at the moment. There's a lot on, basically. I have a little festival at the end of the month in the UK, and then it's the American tour if they let us in, which you never know in these strange times. So, and yeah, there's a new Teargarden album coming out very soon, so that's actually kind of exciting as well. Oh, I like your dog. He's great.
Thank you. Yes, she's a huge ball of fluff.
Oh, she's
And
adorable.
and as for you being busy, I wouldn't expect any less. You seem to be one of the most prolific artists in the industry. But let's start with something I always wanted to know and I never got a chance to learn. What's the meaning of your stage name? Where did it come from?
Basically, it's my mum's uh, maiden name. Admittedly, that was with a C rather than a K, and because I never knew my father, and my birth name, in a way, was an invented name as well for him because he was a like half German descent around and the time of the Second World War. And so basically, I adopted my mum's name. Yeah, because I lived with my mum. I grew up with my mum, and I sort of like it seemed like you know the best thing to do at the time. No, so yeah, that's where Ka-Spel came from, and I guess it's like the little dash in there is just to add a little bit of mysticism because we were all doing that in the 80s. So
Yeah, because hearing the spell part, I thought there's like a story behind that, some sorcery magic story,
no, yeah,
stuff like
that's
that.
much simpler in a way.
And what about the band name? I read like three to five different stories about the origin of the band name. Was the true one the one with the vintage piano?
Yeah, that's the actual one. It's a very old piano in a squatted house in the east of London, and yeah, see, when we started, it's like basically we were laying our hands on any instrument that was around. I mean, I bought a little synthesizer, and but in the house where where we first formed, yeah, there was this big old piano, and there were these big blobs of pink nail varnish on a few of the keys, which, if you sounded them together, made a really interesting discord. And it was just like referred to as the legendary Pink Dots, and somehow it stuck. And it's like, well, why not? Almost a case of why not that name rather than let's choose a name. It went along in that
Because earlier
direction.
you had a different name. Well, what was it? It was
Oh, one day.
one
Yeah,
day.
mainly because we say one day we'll do this, one day we'll do that. But that's very brief.
What about the formation of the band? How did the legendary Pink Dots come to be?
Friends. Yeah, we were all friends. Um, we were all like basically sort of hippies, I guess, in a very loose way. We travelled to festivals together. We just knew each other, and as soon as I made the move of buying that synthesizer, which was just after watching a festival together, the Stonehenge one, um, we, this idea of like, let's do it, let's make a band, you know, create rather than consume, and I was going to do it whatever happened, and it was just nice to actually have a couple of friends who were as serious as I was, because I'd tried before. There'd been little bands before, even in my school days, but they didn't last long enough, really. Like there was one which was semi-serious, but then I left school and they left school and we all went in different directions, and so it didn't last. We even recorded a cassette, but that cassette is sadly lost, to be honest.
Did you have any musical training before you started the band?
No, none at all.
None of you.
No, nobody did. No,
And what's the current status of Mr. Silverman?
he retired. He seems to be in a good shape. He's just enjoying his retirement. And I think that it was the touring that worried him the most. It is quite demanding when you get to a certain age, and he just decided he kind of like didn't want to go on with it, basically. So, I mean, I still hope he'll make more music one of these days, but I don't know. In a way that's for him to decide.
And what's the secret behind the band's longevity?
I guess, I mean, I've been there, of course, since the very beginning. I'm a little bit of a fanatic, if the truth be told. A little obsessive, and I still don't think we've gone as far as we can. As long as I feel that way, the drive will be there. If I feel we've actually gone as far as we can, then I will stop, because there's nothing I hate. It's like existing beyond your sell-by date, because that's something that nobody needs. But I think there's a lot to discover still, and it's a great band at the moment. I won't deny it. There's a real passion in the band. Like Eric has been in the band. How? Jesus, it must be close to 20 years all told now. So I mean, it's not like he's the new guy or something. And even Randall has been in it for 3 years now. So
Actually, the first and the second time I've seen you live, you referred to Eric as the new member. So
yeah,
it could have been something around 20, 21 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. He's not a new member anymore. No, he's really and he also, like, he gives so much to the band. I mean, basically the last album there was a lot of interaction between us all, like, because Randall coming in has offered a whole new energy as well. And yeah, he'd been with us for 3 years, although we've known him for 25 years. And it was just a natural fit. It was like there was nothing to talk about. He just basically, it was something that had to happen. And he offers a lot of new musical ideas, and a lot of fresh horizons to aim for, basically.
Aside for the legendary Pink Dots, you also have a prolific solo career, and you're a part of the Tiergarten. By the way, I love the pun because I think it comes from German Tiergarten.
Yes, and indeed it did.
So, how do you differentiate between the bands? I mean, when you write something, how do you pick which band it's gonna go to?
I don't really. It's that's the. I mean, the Tiergarten, the new Tiergarten, was very simple, because Kevin sent me a lot of music to work on, and I could choose what I thought would work for us both and to develop. And so I did that, and sort of like sent back. So it's like to and fro all the time. But I didn't actually write any music for the new Tiergarten. I just basically arranged it, or sort of put it a little bit into shape. And so it really has its own sound, something completely, of it. It is the Tiergarten. It can't even be confused with the Dots, apart from my voice being there. It sounds like me and Kevin, rather than the legendary Pink Dots.
So there is a new album coming.
Oh yeah, yes, it's actually finished. It's just the final mixing is going on right now.
Yeah, I was wondering whether the project is still alive. Given your how unconventional, not to say weird or strange, your creative output is, I was wondering whether your creative method is also, like unconventional, or is it just, like you sit at home in some room and just do the stuff?
That's a hard one to say. Yeah, I mean, how I don't have a specific methodology. Basically, I guess I think it in my head first, and then just try and realize it, on the keyboards, and very, whatever comes, into my orbit, and take it from there. I mean, of course, it never sounds at all like what you actually originally heard in your head, but that's a part of the fun of it as well. But if you ask for specific methodology, can't really say. I mean, when I'm mixing, then there is a certain way I follow, which is, I guess, my own way, and in a way, kind of a secret. But I know what I want. It's a lot of it. So much of it is intuition. It's not. I'm not actually a very technical person at all. I'm okay, as you might have noticed, sort of setting up this interview. But I do somehow find my own way around the machines and the computers and the digital audio workstations and the various things. I find a way. And in some ways, it's very similar to how I did things in the 80s. I've just adapted it to the times we live in now.
Yeah, that was my next question. Like, how technology changed the way you write and record music, and are you afraid that AI is gonna, kind of put some stress on artists, like trying to take over the place?
I mean, AI, it's a very curious phenomenon. I'm curious. I'm interested in AI. I would like to sort of mess with it a bit and see what happens on some level. Quite recently, somebody on Facebook, I don't know, just asked some AI platform, I guess ChatGPT or something like that, to write a song or song lyrics in the style of Edwarda Ka-Spela, and the results it produced were actually like uncannily coherent, uncannily meaningful in a certain way. And I thought, well, if you're a casual listener of the Pink Dots, you might well think I had actually written this, but it did lack the humour. There was no humour there at all, and there is always humour in what I do. Right. It might be very ironic humour, but it's never. It might be extremely black humour, but it's humour nevertheless, and it was lacking that. Of course, there will probably come the time when AI learns to laugh.
Yeah, probably. I think it's probably irony and humor that
Yeah.
makes me kind of feel like I'm keeping my job for a couple of years. Still, I think. And what about? Well, on the other hand, given how AI learns stuff, you have a huge creative output, so it had a lot of material to learn from,
It's got a
right?
lot it can actually work with. Yeah, it's very true. But yeah,
But if you had to remotely estimate how many songs you produced, I read by the turn of the century it was about 500. So
oh,
are you past 1,000 by now?
probably more. Yeah, I mean, I've never been a good statistician. I've never counted what I did. I've never counted the releases I'm involved in. I let other people do that. Because other people probably more suited to the task. I'm just not suited to that kind of thing. There isn't enough time.
Do you ever come back to your, like old songs for inspiration? Do you recycle ideas? Do you kind of have these recurring themes you are kind of hooked on?
Yeah, I guess there are recurring themes for sure because I am me, and the things that bother me 30 years ago could very much bother me still now. The world has not become a better, brighter place since I began. In fact, it's a lot darker, I would say, on the whole. Um, and you do tend to move with the times. You do tend to tap into the mood of the moment when you write. So there will be themes that occur again and again and again, with different slants on them according to what you've seen and what you've heard and what you've felt. I mean, basically, I guess it's true. I would like to say I don't repeat myself, but I guess on some level I must here and there, simply because there's so much material out there. It's not intentional. It's everything you write because you feel it at that moment. But yeah, sometimes you get the same feeling, only
But, can you
with a
even
slight different shade to it.
I was wondering how many songs you actually wrote you still are able to remember.
Oh, tons of them. Yeah, yeah, sure. I have no trouble with that. It's yeah. I mean, I had a photographic memory. I mean, it's not as great as it was in my youth, admittedly, because I really could sort of remember anything I read. Anything it was like and recall it sort of word for word, like entire pages. I don't have that ability anymore, but it's decent enough. My memory, because I guess the more information you cram into your head, there has to be a point where you have to let some of it go, especially these days because there's information overload. Absolutely.
So at the moment you live in England, right?
hmm
So what was the reason for you to leave England in the 80s, and what was the reason for you to come back?
Well, I guess the biggest reason in the 80s to go to the Netherlands was because I had a Dutch girlfriend and I just wanted to be with her. Um, and then the whole band, apart from Patrick, also moved to the Netherlands. Then a couple of them moved back, but I was very much in the Netherlands, even though my relationship ended. I didn't want to return to the UK. Like after about 27 years, I mean, sadly, my mum died, and I found myself living in the Netherlands in a very small village. Well, not a very small village, it's actually quite a large village, but in a place where I didn't feel I belonged, and my wife, Alona, didn't feel she belonged. Neither of us were Dutch. We had a small child, and it was like, well, we need to go somewhere where we can, do better than this. And as I say, sadly, my mum died, and I inherited her house, and it was a case of do we just sell the house and find somewhere else to live in Holland, or do we maybe move back to the UK and sort of have a nice new challenge and see what it's like? And it was like living now after 27 years, moving to the UK is moving to a foreign country because the UK itself had changed. And even though I'd been back and forth, many times, obviously to see my mum, you don't see the changes until you've actually lived here for a while. And some of the changes were good, and some really weren't. But certainly in London, I found attitudes had improved a lot. When I left in the 80s, there was an awful lot of racism and stuff. Sort of like bad stuff. Sort of like that has, I would say, largely been eliminated in London. People get along. It's like all creeds, all colours, and it's wonderful. I can't say that for the whole country, but then I don't go to the rest of the whole country. But there were old attitudes that, Brexit for a start. I mean, what was that? I mean, what the worst thing that ever could have happened. And, terrible for me and terrible for the band. And, yeah, sort of like just on a personal level, but completely just absolutely brainless decision that sort of had nothing good about it, only bad. And
Well,
I
also
didn't.
a Russian decision, right?
Hmm?
Also a Russian decision
You
in
think
a
it's a
way.
Russian decision, Brexit?
Well, they had
I don't know. I don't know.
a lot to
I,
do with it, I think.
I mean, yeah. I mean, my wife is Russian for a start. I should say, but but not no, but not in favour of like Putin or any of this kind of stuff. Far from it. I'm absolutely against him. But you know, it is a complicated work. I do get a good insight into the Russian way of thinking, obviously from that respect. And I don't know if the Russians could cause Brexit. I think the Russians could cause sort of like certain world leaders sort of like throwing their weight around at the moment. Uh, but Brexit, you know, basically, it's a fact that on the night of the referendum itself, the most asked question to Google was, "What is the European Union. It's not the Russians, it's ignorance. It's a lack of education that caused Brexit. And I saw it coming because I remember that attitude back in the 80s. And you can't blame it on outside nations. You can only blame it on the nation you're in. Yeah, these people aren't being brainwashed, sort of like they're being by I don't know, Putin, Trump. Well, not Trump wasn't there, of course, at that time, but you know, whoever they were being brainwashed by a hideous media here, and like people with like very greedy people in positions of power. They're all absolutely British.
And how would you say your music evolved? Well, music and lyrics evolved throughout the years. Are you? Do you have different goals as an artist nowadays than you had back in the day?
I'd say the same goal. Aiming for something that I can't really define in words. I know what it is, but I cannot hope to define it, and that can't really stop. It's like I will keep going until I either get there or I get close, and I still don't know if I'm really close yet. I mean, it might seem strange, but try again.
And is the stream of consciousness a huge part of your creative method nowadays?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And psychedelic music is usually kind of comes hand in hand with drugs. With drugs, a huge part of the seminal moments of the legendary Pink Dots.
To be honest, I just eat blueberries, drink the odd glass of prosecco, and try and keep my mind as clear as possible. I don't really want to sort of like eat it away with various substances. Too late for that.
What about storytelling? I mean, you're one of the best storytellers I've ever heard. Like the first time I've been to your concert, you started telling a story about a guy who lived uh, in a uh, in a house where everything was controlled electrically, and there was a power outage, and he kind of drank himself to death because he couldn't leave the room because the doors wouldn't open.
Yeah, there was like that was a divide. Yeah, there was basically a theme as a song on like an earlier album, but you could improvise a different story based on that kind of like theme every night. So indeed, it would change every night because there's a real there's a night it represents a very nice challenge to see where you can go, where you can take it. Keeps the mind active.
Yeah, and kind of when you were telling the story, you kind of started squatting, and the lights were getting dimmer and dimmer. And when you finished, it was all dark, and it was all silent, and the crowd was totally mute. So it sure did the impression. I mean, made the impression. And did you ever think about changing the genre, like starting a writer's career?
No, 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 never. I mean, of course it's an appealing thought, but I just don't have the time really. I'm so consumed with the music. I'm doing the music. I'd need a second lifetime to entertain the thought of writing a book.
And can you tell us about your influences? Because some of them are pretty obvious, like krautrock or science fiction literature. What else? What was the seminal thing in kind of creating the what the legendary Pink Dots were and are?
I suppose. I mean, I've got to give a nod to Pink Floyd because that was the first band probably I really liked because it just somehow seemed to like to a young mind, it was offering like almost a door into a different kind of dimension, and I like that. And if you go through that door, there's no coming back from the other side of that door. You know, I guess that's the drug, is the thirst for new colors, new worlds. Yeah, it's that becomes an obsession in itself, and I guess the best way to realize those new worlds, those new dimensions, is to sort of like find them within yourself, because it's all there. You've just got to tap into them.
Well, I guess I can second that. Maybe not precisely Pink Floyd, but for me, the legendary Pink Dots and Coil, where like the seminal acts when it came to um, turning from metal or goth to something more avant-garde, I would say. So thank you for that.
That's
And
great.
you're known to be really friendly with the fans. I mean, I had an opportunity to have a beer with Niels when he wore these glasses on the spring, these eyeballs on the spring. Uh, at one concert with Eric and with Silverman. Do you ever get, like a negative backlash for that? Like, do you get stalkers? Do you get, like weird people attending? I
Oh
read
yeah.
you once you had to hide in a closet because of a fan who was roaring, raging, and roaming somewhere backstage.
Oh, I've had my share, yeah, over the years.
Can you care to elaborate? I mean, care to share a couple of those?
I just thought, in a way, that there's nothing to the stories apart from the fact that some people do clearly stalk you. Sometimes I've had people shout at me right in my face. I mean, like there was one show in Kiel, I remember, in the earlier days, with a guy who's just like, every time I was like singing, he just started shouting and screaming at me, like literally a foot in front of me. And at a certain point, I just had to like say, like, what is your problem? And he yelled at me, you are so negative. And so, like, I just said, well, what do you think you're being? And he actually ran to the back of the hall and out the door. I don't know what happened there. But, obviously, I guess he was on something very strange. Um, yeah, but mostly, I mean, a lot of people follow us over the years, like over the decades, which is remarkable. I mean, of course, a lot of new people come to us as well, which is great. But it's lovely to see that a lot of people have taken the long ride, and we get that often. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess that's partly because we do communicate so very directly. If someone writes to me, I write back. If someone asks me to sort of sign something, I will always sign it. It's like it's something you do. You want to communicate. They are they become like friends of the legendary Pink Dots. I hate the word fans, and for me, that's how it should be. It is a community, and it's a community that stands on its own in a very hostile world. And I want it to feel like that without becoming a cult. Because I do believe people should always think for themselves. I don't think they should necessarily think like me. They wouldn't want to think like me, actually, for that reason. I don't want that. I want them to think for themselves. But if I can offer any food for thought, great.
And that's a pretty nice closure to our interview. So thank you a lot.
No, thank you.